Hey everyone, welcome. This is our third evening of keynotes at the first annual Learning Revolution conference. We're very excited to have Cindy Mediavilla talking about learning by doing internships and residencies, her experience at UCLA and working with LA Public Library. So it's very exciting. Cindy is a dear friend of mine and a library hero. So I'm very excited to be introducing you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. All right. I'm going to move through here. I want to thank ClassFlow, our sponsor for this event, and of course Blackboard Collaborate for allowing us to use this great platform. And this is the map slide. So everyone is typically familiar with this. If you go ahead and grab your pointer, which is that second tool down on your toolbar along the left-hand side of your screen, you can point to where you're logging in from. And go ahead and type in the chat where you're at, what the weather's like, where you'd rather be, all of that. Peggy is always the heat report from Phoenix. It's like a cool day for you, Peggy. Excellent. And Payush logging in from India. Got people in Australia and New Zealand. This is great. Excellent. All right. Cindy, I am going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you so much for keynoting this event.
Well, thank you, Amy, and thanks for your kind introduction. And wow, I'm blown away by where everyone's coming from. I'm sitting here in LA where it's beautiful, but wow, Australia and India, very impressive. So thank you, Amy and Steve, for inviting me to be part of this very interesting and exciting event. My name is Cindy Mediavilla, and I wear many professional hats, including teaching for the UCLA Department of Information Studies and working part-time for the California State Library. But tonight I'm speaking as a freelance consultant who has managed and evaluated many library projects over the past 2 decades. My topic tonight is learning by doing, especially as relates to library internships and residencies, though of course this topic really could relate to just about any profession. Librarians have debated the value of library education versus library practice since the days of Melville Dewey. Indeed, a recent editorial posted on the Library Journal website generated an avalanche of responses when Editor-in-Chief Michael Kelly questioned the value of the Masters of Library Science degree. 170 comments have been posted so far. I read the first 70 and tried to tally the sentiment of the comments. And so I can say that the discussion was pretty much 50-50, with half of the people defending the need for higher library education and half disputing it. Several people also mentioned the need for library apprenticeships, which I found especially interesting, especially in light of my topic tonight. As someone who has taught as an adjunct faculty member for both the San Jose State and UCLA library schools for almost 25 years, I can attest to the value of a good, solid library education. Library school provides a philosophical as well as theoretical foundation to library work that you might not be able to acquire on your own once you're in the busy throes of actually providing library service. A thorough understanding of intellectual freedom, organization, and the benefits and challenges of technology should all be part of a librarian's mental toolkit before starting that very first library job. Library school should also imbue its graduates with strong critical thinking and decision-making skills. However, as a former practitioner who worked in public libraries for almost 20 years, I also believe in the value of learning by doing, and so that's what I'm going to talk about this evening. In particular, I'm going to tell you about 2 apprenticeship programs I helped create and managed, and what the participants learned during those experiences. And there we are. The first program, From Interns to Library Leaders, or PHIL as we called it, F-I-L-L, was an internship program that placed Los Angeles-based library school students in internships in local area public libraries. In early 2001, many LA public libraries were plagued with what the Los Angeles Times called a vexing shortage of public librarians. Even the highly respected Los Angeles Public Library had a 17% vacancy rate at that time. Local library school students were more interested in working for movie studios, art museums, and other special libraries after they graduated. Students thought public library salaries were too low and, quite frankly, considered public librarianship one of the least sexy types of librarianship, despite the fact that we look pretty darn good on that LJ cover, I must say. That's me on the left, and then 2 of the students who went through the internship program. We're so sexy. Thank you, Amy. I saw your comment. Very good. Okay. So to lure students into public librarianship, the PHIL program provided a hefty stipend for interning in LA area public libraries. The hope, of course, was that once the interns became exposed to the joys of working in a public library, they would then become public librarians after graduation. I was hired to write a grant to pay for the stipends. I then became manager of the program once it was funded. I managed the program its first 2 years. During that time, during those 2 years, we placed 82 students into 87 public library internships. And the students were from UCLA as well as the San Jose program, which in 2001, I think was just starting to be sort of worldwide, so there were San Jose students in the LA area. Because few internships at the time offered a stipend, the application process was extremely competitive, with students having to explain why and how they hoped to broaden their knowledge of public libraries. If an intern already had library experience, that person was then purposely assigned to another department so he or she could learn a whole new set of skills. A cataloger, for instance, would be assigned to work at a reference desk. Likewise, someone comfortable working in a central library would be assigned to a branch. The whole purpose was to provide as broad exposure as possible to public librarianship in the time allotted. So what was learned? Depending on the library, the interns experienced everything from conducting children's story times to staffing the reference desk to helping conduct community needs assessments. One intern said he was allowed to attend library board meetings, sit in on job interviews, set up displays, create tutorials, and create bibliographies. In short, he said, I not only did my own thing, but I was given the opportunity to see the not-so-glamorous nuts and bolts part of how a public library works. Many students who had very little knowledge of public libraries gained a keen appreciation for their internship sites. One intern, who had focused primarily on academic librarianship beforehand, discovered that in a public library, you actually feel like you are answering reference questions that are important to people's lives, as opposed to academic questions for research or student papers. You really see and feel what librarianship is about. Another intern said he gained a real appreciation for the importance of a public library within the community and the amount of effort involved in providing a variety of services. And yet another said, my field experience gave me a greater degree of respect and admiration for public libraries and librarians, and increased my awareness and understanding of public library issues. The internship also opened students' eyes to new possibilities. I had intended to be an archivist, one student noted. However, my field experience made it immediately clear how much I belonged in a public library. I enjoyed working with children. Children's librarianship is now a real possibility for me. Another intern passionately related how the Phil experience completely changed her professional outlook. Phil opened my eyes to a different aspect of librarianship that actually provided me my purpose. If I had not had this opportunity, she said, I may not have ever found my purpose, which is to be active in providing service to underserved people in my community. A surprising number of other students had similar revelations while working with disadvantaged library users. And to me, this was one of the high points of the Phil project, that so many students were suddenly exposed to working with disadvantaged groups of people, and they really then understood the value of public librarianship. As one intern who had previously worked with wealthier library users related, I got to observe a total different community and their library habits. It was an eye-opening experience to see how a poor community uses and appreciates library resources and staff. I was really shocked at the difference. At the end of the internship, each student was surveyed about the experience and was asked to speculate on future career plans. All but one said they would now see themselves working in a public library. Even the one person who said he would stick with academic libraries praised his public library experience for reinforcing his belief in public access. Students who were determined to become reference librarians suddenly saw themselves as potential children's librarians and even library directors, which was really pretty amazing. One student said, although I have not been exposed to all public library positions, the internship experience made me recognize how much I would enjoy working in a lot of different positions within public librarianship. I'd be willing to try most anything now. So, to sum up, by being able to actually become public librarians for even a short period of time, many, if not all of the students, had a profound learning experience not necessarily available in the classroom. By experiencing the variety of tasks and operations that are typical to public library work, the students came to quickly appreciate what public librarians are able to accomplish on a daily basis. Several students also had an epiphany about serving disadvantaged populations, with some interns experiencing a profound change in their service attitude. And even the students who never before envisioned themselves as public librarians could now seriously see themselves in that role. At the end of the first 2 years, a longitudinal survey was sent to the first batch of Phil interns who had graduated the year before. Almost half said they were now working in public libraries, while most of the others were working in special and academic libraries. One even became director of a small community college library in Oregon. 58% said Phil had influenced their career choices and were grateful for the skills gained during their internships. A modified version of the Phil project still exists in the Los Angeles area today. For more information about Phil and its results, I would hope that you would be interested in seeing my book, Public Library Internships, Advice from the Field, which was published by Scarecrow Press in 2006. Not only does the book talk about my internship or the Phil internship, but it also surveys several public library internship programs across the United States, and is one of the few works ever written on this topic. So I see a lot of chat going on, which I really can't watch because I'm looking at my script, but At this point, let's take a breather and see what questions you have either about the Phil project or about internships in general, or if you want to share experiences that you've had as an intern. So let's see here.
Maureen was asking, she lives in a really rural community. Do you know, were any of the libraries that you worked with, I know in LA it's not really a rural population, but was this ever replicated like in the valley, like in Central California or anywhere where there might have been really small communities with very limited resources as far as like staff would go?
Well, no, this particular project that I was involved with only happened in the LA basin. So no rural. We have no rural libraries in Los Angeles. Although there are, you know, an hour away, there are rural libraries. But no, this was all in very urban areas of Los Angeles. And as far as I know, while we were in the first couple of years of Phil, when I was overseeing it, we did get lots of questions about the program. But as far as I know, it's never really been replicated. So the thing that made this particular program unique was that, well, for the first 2 years, we had grant money to pay the students to do the internships, which was a huge incentive for students who had no previous interest in public librarianship to do internships in public libraries. And as you saw from the results, about 50% of those folks actually then did work in public libraries, even ones who had expressed zero interest in public librarianship. Once they did the internship, that they got very immersed and excited about public librarianship and did then accept positions in public libraries. But as far as I know, this exact model has never been replicated before, since then, except that it does continue today. Other comments?
Thanks for answering that. And yeah, if anyone has a question they'd like to ask on the mic, feel free to raise your hand. I'll give you mic permissions also.
Excellent. That'd be great. Any comments out there? Any experiences that you want to share? Where does the funding, oh, this is a good question from Peggy. Where does the funding come from for the program now? The program was originally run out of a regional system here in the Southern California area called the Metropolitan Cooperative Library System. That group of libraries has a different name now. It's called the Southern California Library Cooperative. And I believe that there's still money attached to the Phil program, that libraries themselves understand the value of having students come in and not just do like a regular internship. These internships tend to be more enhanced. And so the libraries themselves, I believe, still come up with not as much money as it started off with, but at least some money to give to the students who end up being interns. And I teach at UCLA, and I know that it's a big deal to students to be Phil interns. They very proudly, I think even if there was no money attached, they very proudly include that on their resumes, and it's still competitive to participate, so it is still a very prestigious program with or without money. Other questions? I'll wait a couple of seconds, then I'll move on. So, okay. You can still ask questions. Okay, let's see. Paid internship provides additional value because you can be really selective. And what we found is, at least when we had the big stipends, and I'll tell you, it was $3,000 per internship. So you can see why it was so prestigious and competitive, it really added a layer of professionalism and made the libraries treated the students very professionally, and the students really felt like they were being treated as colleagues as opposed to some internships. My impression is that students go away feeling like, they're just treating me like a student. So yeah, this was a very, very special project. And yeah, it makes a bigger deal for the students, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but please, there will be time at the end as well to ask about anything that we talk about. So if you have more questions about internships, that would be a good time for that. Okay, so we're going to scoot ahead now to about 10 years, to the year 2011, when longtime colleague Martin Gomez contacted me about a project he was starting at the Los Angeles Public Library, where he was then the library director. Martin explained that his library's foundation, the funding group, had gotten a grant to start a residency program at LAPL. And by the way, this is a beautiful picture of the Central Library, Los Angeles Public Library. I'm guessing shortly after it opened in the late 20s, early 30s. Martin explained again that his library foundation had gotten a grant to start a residency program at the library. Did I know anyone who might be interested in helping create the program? After discussing the project further and meeting with folks from the foundation, I was asked to head the project. My first task was to figure out what LAPL's residency, which we ended up calling the Innovation Leadership Program, might look like. Now, for those of you who don't know, residencies are 1 to 2 year full-time apprenticeships offered to new librarians, usually just by academic libraries. There's a rich tradition in academic libraries going back to the 1970s of academic library residencies. The purpose of the residency is to provide recent library school graduates with an opportunity to gain temporary hands-on experience before moving on to permanent employment. Although employment is not guaranteed at the end of the experience, the residency does provide enough well-rounded exposure to real-life librarianship that the resident can feel confident when competing for a permanent job. Residencies differ from internships in that they tend to be longer and broader in scope, at least a year long versus a single school term for an internship, and are meant for new librarians rather than just for library school students. So residencies are a postgraduate appointment. Like I've already mentioned, the majority of residencies are typically offered by academic libraries. However, I did find an example of a small public library in Darien, Connecticut that had recently conducted 2 very successful residency cycles. I therefore talked to the folks in Darien, as well as talking to some academic librarians while researching residency programs. I also did an extensive literature search to identify the elements needed for a successful residency. Although no one residency model exists, certain characteristics do emerge when comparing the various programs that exist in the United States. Again, most of the programs are 2 years long. During the first year, residents rotate through 3 to 4 library departments to get a broad overview of the organization as well as librarianship in general. During the second year, the residents tend to focus on a particular area of specialization, resulting in a capstone project that benefits either the library or the profession at large. In academic libraries, the cohorts tend to include 1 to 7 residents who are, of course, recent library school graduates. And what they have found is that the larger the group, the more quickly the participants learn, because the student or the residents are bouncing ideas off of each other and sharing their new knowledge with each other. Plus, with a larger group, a feeling of camaraderie naturally develops. So the bigger the group, apparently, the better. Having a mentor who is not the person's supervisor is another important feature of many residencies, as is diversity. Many libraries either attempt to recruit recent graduates of color to be residents, or they emphasize projects that involve services to underserved communities. And finally, most residency programs offer participants a variety of professional development opportunities, such as outside workshop training and encouraging visits to other libraries, as well as paid attendance at local, state, and national conferences. So you can see that a lot of attention and effort are placed on the new librarian residents. Now, LAPL decided to embrace all of these aspects when designing its residency program. Excuse me for a minute, I'm going to cough. Okay. The Innovation Leadership Program rotates its residents among branches and departments of the Central Library. After the rotation period, the residents are then tasked with creating a specialization project that will improve LAPL services. The LAPL residency cohort includes 2 residents who graduated from library school during the previous year. And so far, the cohorts have been comprised of a diverse group of team members. So the diversity element is there as well. And LAPL supports professional development through paid conference attendance, as well as in-house workshops and trips to observe other innovative libraries. And you noticed I didn't talk about mentor relationships. And that is what makes, I think, one of the things that makes LAPL's residency really unique, in addition to the fact that it's in a public library, not in an academic library. While most residency programs focus on the development of recently graduated librarians, the Innovation Leadership Program also emphasizes the grooming of future library directors. And so there are actually 2 development tracks in LAPL's residency program. The first one provides new librarians, the residents, with real-world experience in a major urban library, while also creating a strong executive leadership experience for mid-level managers who we call fellows, who it is hoped will one day become the next generation of library directors. To accomplish these 2 objectives, the residents are paired with 2 experienced LAPL middle managers who in turn provide guidance and mentoring during the residency experience. So how did we roll out this truly unique public library program? Because funding for the initial ILP grant was for 1 year only, it was decided to pilot a 6-month residency before more funding was pursued for a 2-year program. The pilot residents worked in a branch and the Central Library for several weeks before completing a capstone specialization project in separate branches. Coincidentally, both residents chose projects that involved creating programming for underserved teens, and I have to say that both programs, each program was just phenomenal. They really did a fabulous job reaching out to the teens. Although it was challenging squeezing an experience that would normally take 2 years to accomplish into 6 months, The pilot exceeded all expectations, and so funding was acquired for another longer 2-year pilot, which is currently in its 2nd year. So let me describe the 2-year program that we're in the middle of right now. During the 1st year of the current 2-year residency, 2 residents rotated among 4 locations, experiencing a myriad of library operations and issues. The residents were also partnered with longtime LAPL employees who had recently been promoted into upper middle management positions themselves. Together, this team has visited public libraries in New York City, San Francisco, Atlanta, Colorado, and Arizona. They have also attended and presented at several library conferences, including ALA, the Public Library Association, and the California Library Association, and they are now in the process of launching their specialization projects. I no longer oversee the program, but I am the project evaluator, and so I can report on what the participants learned during the 6-month pilot, as well as what's been learned so far during the 2-year residency. And here are my findings so far. The residents in particular have learned how to adapt to change in a new environment, while conversely learning exactly how slowly change diffuses through a large organization. And sort of the irony here is that the residents are in the midst of a whirlwind of new experiences and learning to adapt to changes, moving from one branch to another branch to the central library, while all at the same time observing just how slowly innovation kind of creeps through a large organization like LAPL. So it's been an interesting sort of dichotomy of what we're experiencing or what we're seeing in this project. Because they've experienced everything from shelving library materials to making programming decisions at several library locations, all the residents, both from the 6-month pilot and the current 2-year program, now have an intimate yet broad view of public library service, something that can otherwise be slow to develop when working in only one location. And those of you who are librarians understand that you graduate, you get your first job, and then you're really focused on becoming acclimated to your new surroundings, your new job, and you're really focusing on doing a good job. And so your view is very narrow. It's on the community members that you're serving. You rarely think really beyond the 4 walls that you go into every day to do your job. With this particular residency program, the residents are experiencing just about everything, and in different size libraries and with different types of clientele, and truly they are accumulating a wealth of knowledge that some librarians, it takes them an entire career maybe to be exposed to all the different things that these new librarians are getting to experience. So it really is quite a wonderful and unique experience. They've also experienced the wide range of customers that public librarians serve every day. Everyone from wealthy, self-sufficient power users to impoverished homeless people. One resident said she learned how to be professional. She quickly learned how to be professional without being overly friendly, a skill that was never taught in library school. Another said that working with diverse members of a low-income community helped reinforce her commitment to social justice. With such a wide variety of clientele and communities across a city the size of Los Angeles, one resident observed that a cookie-cutter approach to service just doesn't work at LAPL. And indeed, each branch is a microcosm, and each community has its own demands. So again, LAPL is almost like a perfect petri dish or place to experiment with a unique, one-of-a-kind, so far, project like this. The fellows, too, have learned much, stretching beyond their daily work routines to advise and collaborate with the residents. They learn from me and I learn from them, one fellow said. The program helps me continue to grow professionally. In addition, visiting public libraries throughout the country has been an energizing exercise that has inspired several new ideas that the ILP team hopes to incorporate at LAPL. And finally, the challenges of the residency, including meeting short deadlines and juggling multiple responsibilities, have taught everyone involved just what they are capable of doing. The residents' confidence in their new librarian skills has been bolstered as a result of the program, and the fellows have honed their management skills as well. In fact, the two 6-month pilot fellows were promoted within LAPL shortly after the 6-month pilot ended, which says to me that their supervisors understood that they had gotten some very valuable experience, and so then that made them more promotable within the organization, which of course is the point of the fellows track of the residency, is to help them move up the career ladder. Like I said above, the 2-year program is now in its 2nd year. The residents have completed their rotations and are now beginning to work on their specialization projects. Final evaluation of the program will be conducted in December of this year, but already it's apparent that the recently graduated residents have learned far more during their first ILP year than they would normally learn as part of an entry-level library job. Both residents are extremely grateful for the opportunities they've been given and been able to take advantage of. So let's see. What questions? I know there's been a lot of chatter on the left that I haven't been able to keep track of, but what questions do you have about the Innovation Leadership Program? And I'll be glancing at the questions and comments here.
Again, guys, if you want to raise your hand, you're welcome to use the mic. Peggy, you had a really good question just a moment ago. I'm going to enable your microphone here. You're welcome to put it in the chat if you don't have your mic on yet.
I see that Peggy is a former pre-service program coordinator, identifying and matching student teachers and interns with mentor teachers.
Yeah, I think that was Peggy's question, is how do you go about finding good mentors for different residents in the program?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We did everything by application. For the 2 residency openings that we had, for the 2 resident openings, rather, we had 100 people apply from all over the country and some from Canada. And it was quite an intensive process, kind of weeding down to, or boiling down to, I think we ended up interviewing 6 or 8 candidates. Yeah, there was quite a big selection committee. I read every single one. One of my colleagues also read every single application, and then we had other people reading different groups of applicants. The in-house for the fellows, lots of people were recruited and encouraged to apply, but they also had to undergo an application process. I believe all in-house fellow candidates were interviewed. And, you know, as arduous as these processes sometimes are, this is an example of, and also with the 6-month pilot, of really the cream rising to the top with both groups of people. So that's how we did it. It was an application process and an interview process, and the best people were assigned the positions. Other questions or comments? And looking at your comments here, let's see. Amy, if this is Tarita. If I've seen any stipulations, it's more that you have to be X years out of library school. Let's see here, intended for newer grads. Peggy says, I love the idea of capstone projects. We required all of our pre-service teachers to complete action research projects. Very good. Valuable skills, absolutely. And Amy's saying that her supervisor, her library supervisor, has encouraged a sort of capstone project as I come to the end of my temporary position. Yeah, very good. That's a wonderful thing to do. You learn so many skills doing that, and plus, what a wonderful reward for you to have this wonderful thing that you did that you can use to market yourself with. Look at what I accomplished. This internship, is there a fee to pay? I'm not exactly sure what that question means. If you're asking if the residents are paid, they are. They're paid employees. Just they are paid employees like a librarian, an entry-level librarian one position. And let's see, more related to finding librarians, libraries that would provide the best learning experiences for the residents. Well, yeah, again, this is one library, LAPL, doing this. So they have a pretty intimate knowledge. The people who made the decisions on who should be appointed, they had a pretty intimate knowledge of all the people who were applying for the positions. If it was broadened out to multiple libraries, that might be a little more difficult to make those decisions. I agree with you. Would you have this internship as an online course? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there. A self-paced course. Yeah. Amy?
I'm thinking that, now, Jenny, I'm not sure, this might not be your question, but at least in my experience, so many library schools have such a distance learning component, if not 100% distance learning. So I think that the real value of this type of a residency program is to complement that. So I see what you're saying. I think that there are a lot of self-paced sort of professional development things for librarians across, public libraries, academic libraries, special libraries, etc. But I think that the hands-on residency program is really that's really different. That's really something special in addition to an education. The practice, the practice component coming in. So I imagine, Jenny, you could probably think of some ways that you might incorporate some online, like a social, I don't know, a platform or something where people could be sharing their experiences of what they're doing in this, physical residency. But I'm not sure. It's a good question, though.
And of course, the whole point of this particular presentation tonight is, as it says, learning by doing, which means getting your hands in there and actually experiencing it. So any sort of combination of just online or a combination of in-person and online, I have absolutely no experience with that, and so I don't feel qualified to even talk about it. What I'm talking about tonight is actually feet on the ground in the building with a mentor face-to-face experience. So it's a little bit different. Other comments? Yeah, in the trenches, indeed. Let me go ahead and just sort of wrap up, and then if there are more questions, I think that would be a good time because I'm sensitive to having 15 minutes left. So let's go ahead. So in conclusion, and if no one's ever been on the UCLA campus, this is a beautiful picture of Powell Library, where when I was a library school student in the 70s, our library school was actually in that building, but now it's in the ground floor of that building. This is the undergrad library at UCLA. So, but let me move on. Sheila S. Intner, Professor Emerita from Simmons College's Graduate School of Library and Information Science, posits that the biggest challenge facing the library profession today is to develop a generation of strong, successful practitioners. To do this, she recommends the creation of modern-day apprenticeships, where graduates can gain experience working with master practitioners who know best practices and can guide them on the path to success. Some of this knowledge can't be taught in a classroom, she says, but needs exposure to day-to-day practical problems to be learned. Based on my experience with both the Phil project and the Innovation Leadership Program, I have to agree. Library school provides a solid philosophical foundation, especially as relates to intellectual freedom, universal access, and library organization. But internships during library school and residencies after graduation allow new professionals to apply what's taught in the classroom. Library students can learn the history and theory of librarianship from books and lectures, but they do not become librarians until they actually begin to practice. Much like nurses, doctors, and lawyers who also incorporate internships and practica into their educational regimen, librarians ultimately learn best by doing. Now, I've pulled together this very short bibliography of some of the titles that I am referring to, that I've referred to throughout my presentation, and some key titles here. The Perez and Gruel book at the end is the single best right now work on residencies in academic librarianship. But I do want to point you back again to the Michael Kelly piece, Can We Talk About the MLS? This is the controversial editorial that he wrote last year and is still getting comments on the comment page. In that editorial, he asked, what skill set or ethos does the MLS degree confer that can only be gained through higher education as opposed to gaining through an apprenticeship? It's a provocative question that's generated 170 comments so far on the Library Journal website. I believe more research is needed before we conclusively know the answer to Kelly's question, but what we've seen accomplished through Phil and ILP, at least I think, gives us a hint. So, here's my contact information if you want to continue the conversation further beyond tonight, and I'm happy to entertain any comments or questions right now.
Thank you so much, Cindy. This has been really great. And I'm seeing a lot of the folks in our room. It's so funny. A lot of you, I didn't have any idea that you were library people. We're always in the teacher crowd, and sometimes teacher librarians don't always make themselves as readily apparent. So it's great to have you all here. Peggy, I really have enjoyed reading some of your comments, and you know, I'm imagining how this kind of a presentation ties into some of the work that you've discussed in classrooms, and how you know, what this sort of a model might look like for teachers. I think that there's a whole lot of potential, you know, for you know, a school partnering with a school district and having residents. And yeah, I think that there's just a lot of really neat things. So if you have any comments, feel free to share in the chat. If you have any questions, I'm happy to turn on your mic. Just let me know. You can raise your hand. It's that third icon in there.
I'd love to hear more comments and questions. And if you're from another discipline, whether or not you have, I'd love to know if you have internships and residencies as well.
Looks like a lot of people are typing. I can't wait to see these comments.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in the post-degree residency. I agree. It really has. There's been a lot of empowerment. The residents have really been empowered during the residency experience. Is there a process in getting school library connected with community libraries? This would be fantastic. Yeah, we've been working towards that for about 150 years. So if you have a solution to that, that would be wonderful. You know, it would be wonderful if schools and community libraries worked more closely together. Somehow, it just hasn't happened yet. Elementary school libraries. Yeah, well, in California in particular, we don't have librarians in elementary school libraries, so it would be great if we could have librarians or even library school students in there helping out with elementary school libraries.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, just responding to some of your comments about, you know, how to connect with the communities. I think that the best way to do that is truly, you know, like the on the ground making connections. That's making phone calls and following up and bothering people. It's all of that to try and develop some sort of partnership or you know, synchronize some sort of model because, you know, so many people are in schools, you know, a lot of public schools are definitely, their missions are certainly parallel to a lot of the values that public library is providing, and so it does seem like there's definitely opportunity. So I would suggest picking up the phone or shooting emails.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The missions of the mission of the public library and the mission of the school is almost identical. And thank you to Rita for reminding us of the residency interest group, which I'm a member of. And the link there, very good. It's a great website, very informative.
Excellent. All right, well, thanks everyone for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here in just a minute. I just want to thank Cindy again. Thank you so much.
It was really fun, and I'm really impressed at the range of audience members from all over the world. So that says that your conference is very successful. So I'm happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.